Thanks for joining us. Not often you get to sit down on the side of a bean field in your rocking chair and talk to Bill McDonald when he's already been in the field and knows exactly what he wants to talk about. And he says, let's talk about stress. What possibly could be stressing you at this time of the year?
Well, we came through a pretty hot, dry period here, and it's still hot and dry. We've got a poor root development this year, and we're just seeing a lot of moisture stress out in these fields.
For those that have a crop, that's the stress. There's an entirely different set of stresses for those that don't have a crop, and these next few comments, probably unrelated, we ought to say they're for those that have a crop and need to figure out how to help it along from here.
That's very true. I mean, I was just on the crop tour with Ohio AgNet, and we toured from northern Ohio clear down into Cincinnati, and we were in some of those unfortunate areas that got nothing planted. It was pretty sad. Part of the leg, there was anywhere from 75 down to 0% of their corn planted. It was just really sad out there. But the guys on the eastern side of 71, things were positive. You know, if it was July 15th instead of August 15th, it was paradise. I mean, nice green lush crops, corn fully pollinated, plenty of rain. It had rained just before we got there, and the outlook was great. You know, I just hope that we have enough rain between now and black layer, and just hope we don't run out of time.
When you talk about that conversation getting to black layer, you've heard several people in different locations now talk about 55 to 60 days after pollination to get to black layer. But that's based on a normal year, a normal root system and everything normal. And there's nothing about this year that's normal. So why are we still having that conversation?
I'm not sure why. I mean, to start out with, if you were fortunate enough to get your corn planted, you probably planted it in less than ideal conditions. We have terrible root development, a lot of tomahawk roots. Roots could not penetrate. And so, you know, that's part of our stress too. You know, maybe down deeper in the soil profile, maybe we have some moisture. You know, there's still some of these tiles running, but the problem is our roots got restricted so bad through compaction and a wet start that we just don't have the root development this year, and it's really expressing that drought that we're going through right now. We're seeing some nutrient deficiencies, a lot of corn yellowing up and starting to fire up, and it's all because we just can't get those roots out, get it into water so that they can make the carbohydrates to put in the leaves for grain fill.
So how much more vulnerable is the crop that's out there because of the initial stress that we had carrying through for the season? Is it susceptible to other diseases and pressures simply because we never got off to an adequate start?
That's a very good point. Whenever you put a corn through unneeded stress, you're going to open it up to all kinds of diseases, whether it be anthracnose, charcoal rot, fusarium, diplodia, you know, whatever disease you think of is free to come into that plant because that plant is weak. He hasn't taken up the nutrients to help him fight off the disease, and we're just going to be open to it. And I hope to goodness that people don't decide to use the cornfield as a grain bin this year, because I'm afraid that in some years past, we're going to see some corn going down at a later stage.
We're sitting in front of a bean field, and there are beans of all height, all stages, and all potential coming up. What are your concerns, particularly on beans?
Well, what I've been seeing is we've had some pods aborting because of the dry weather. I've actually seen some 3-bean pods that have actually aborted a bean in that pod, and then also a lot of two bean pods. And I'm not seeing the clusters that I've seen in the past. You know, to stand back and look at a bean field, it's kind of exciting. You know, at least I'm going to have some good beans. But then you get in there and you open back that canopy and you say, oh my goodness, I'm in trouble. I hope we continue to get rain, because some of those pods at those nodes aren't actually aborted yet. They're small pods there, and if we can get rain, we can put bushels on these beans yet. We still got hope. With corn, we don't have hope. At this stage, we're looking at R3. Corn's already decide how many kernels it's going to put on, how many rows it's going to put on, and we've already aborted kernels at the end of the cob. So right now, what we're hoping with some rain is to add some kernel depth and some test weight. If we can get that, we can still add a little bit of bushels, but we've lost our full potential.
So for the soybean side of things, we need a year like last year where guys were hoping it would frost in early November so we could get the double crop beans to finally lose their leaves and get harvested.
We're looking at the same thing for corn. Corn and beans are no different. I would love to see nothing more than a late October, early November frost, just to give this crop as much time as we possibly can. This warm weather isn't actually hurting us because corn likes it hot. 80, 85 degrees, corn's loving life as long as we cool off at nights. But what we need now is the water, because I'm afraid that come September, we're not going to have that heat that corn likes, and it's going to slow the process down, and we will be taking wet corn off this fall.
I'm going to shift total gears on you and say, all right, if everything's going to come off this late and Mother Nature would happen to provide us a frost-free fall for several days, what's that do to next year's wheat crop?
It's going to be planted awfully late. It looks bad, for some of these people that have prevent planting. Your wheat can go there. It's going to be awfully tough, unless we have an awful forgiving November to get a wheat established and get it to stool out in time before winter.
So if you haven't gotten a cover crop established on prevent plant, maybe the way to go is to consider wheat.
Well, that's always a consideration. I mean, it's a early cash crop. I mean, you can double crop beans into it. You can tile. You can do whatever you want with those acres. So it's not a bad idea. Maybe not one that people want to do, but it's an option.
They didn't want to plant the way they planted this year, but some got it done anyway. All right, Bill, we've been sitting out here having a nice conversation about stresses and things, and there's these flies flying around that we've been told actually are beneficial. Explain what these little flies or sweat bee-looking things are.
No, they're not sweat bees. They're hoverflies. And hoverflies, from what I know, the larvae of a hoverfly likes to eat aphids. So when we're around the cornfield, on our crop tour, we didn't see any aphids. Last year we saw aphids. We didn't see hoverflies. This year we didn't see aphids, and there's all these hoverflies. So I think there is some truth to the fact that the hoverfly larvae is a ferocious predator towards aphids, and that's what's given us this big population of hoverflies.
I've been visiting with Bill McDonald from Seed Consultants about the stresses in the fields this year.